Many people in life often have a lot of questions about happiness, what it means to be truly happy, how they can pursue happiness, and it seems like a lot of people spend most of their lives pursuing this idea of happiness without ever achieving it. So tonight, we've invited three of our guests to give us their perspective on what this idea of happiness actually means and how we can actually pursue the idea from an Islamic perspective. Our first speaker, Imam Mohammed Azhari, is currently a teacher at the Australian International Islamic College. For those of you who don't know him, he's the son of Imam Abdul Quddus al-Azhari, based at the Darul Uloom in Buranda. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Imam up to the podium.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين إمام المتقين قائد المجاهدين شفيع المذنبين رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وأصحاب البررة الكرام أما بعد عباد الله اللهم أخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمنا بنور الفهم وافتح علينا بمعرفة العلم وسهل أخلاقنا بالحلم وجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. My dear respected brothers and sisters, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers of Seekers Guidance Point, Brisbane, for having us all today in very esteemed presence today. Inshallah, we'll be talking about where happiness is and the pursuit for happiness. So I guess the first thing is that nobody wakes up in the morning thinking, may I suffer the whole day? Is there anyone that does that? All of us, which means somehow, consciously or not, whatever we do, whatever we hope and whatever we dream, somehow is related to a deep, profound desire for well-being and happiness. If you look at the literature that has been written in the East and the West, you would find that there is an incredible diversity of definitions of what happiness might be. However, there is a scholar from France, French philosopher, his name is Henry Bergson. He says all the great thinkers of humanity have left happiness in the vague, so that each of them could define happiness in their own terms. That would be fine if happiness was a secondary thing that we are looking for. But if happiness is the sole thing that determines the quality of life, then we must have a clearer understanding of what makes us happy. So, to go on this journey, we like to ask ourselves, how do we define happiness? Every single one of us. How do we define happiness? Do we picture happiness to be a certain age, a certain point of our lives, certain activities that we did? Do we think happiness is a device, something that we have, possessions, accessories? Or do we think happiness is our clothes, the garments that we wear, the white collar? Or is happiness in our careers? Does happiness have to do with the status and the prestige of your job? Or does it matter about how much money you have and the way that you invest it in a money tree, investing it in Does that determine your happiness? How much money you have? Or is it a feeling? Is it something that you can switch on and off, that you're happy sometimes and you're not happy another time? Is it an emotion? Is it something that you laugh about and you smile? Is happiness just about smiling? Or is it about celebrities, fame? Or does it have to do with social networks, Facebook and the rest of them? Can you find happiness on them? Or is it the relationships and the love that we have in our lives? Or is it a place? Is happiness a certain place in our lives which once existed? So all of this put together, are you a bit confused about what makes you happy now? In order to understand what happiness is, let's go through a process to eliminate what is happiness and what is not, what makes us happy and what doesn't. What is the right ways of seeking happiness? So the misconceptions that many people have today is happiness is pleasure, which we understand that happiness is not, it's not got to do with pleasure, because pleasure is contingent upon its time, contingent upon its object. Also, it's contingent upon the place, and it's something that changes with its nature. Pleasure changes with its nature. For example, we have a beautiful chocolate cake. Okay, we have a beautiful chocolate cake. The first bite, amazing, delicious, the first slice. The second, not so nice. And then the third, we feel disgust. That's the nature of this world. Being a fan of anything, whether it be football, whether it be watching certain trends develop in your society and following them, or eating a cake, we get tired. We are limited. And not only that, but we understand that we are bounded by our senses, our sensory feelings. And this is because people are looking for happiness outside oneself. People are looking for happiness outside oneself. And normally when people are looking for happiness outside themselves, you would find that they seek happiness in artificial, materialistic matters and in momentary pleasures that usually end up finishing, and then after they have their pleasure, it drops them into a deep depression and emptiness. You would find that sorry about that. Excessive indulgence in pleasures usually causes many people to feel sad. And this is obvious in celebrities today. We find that examples in Heath Ledger, Brittany Murphy, Elvis Presley, and Michael Jackson. All of these people, all of these celebrities, they indulged and they had everything of the world. They had everything of the world, all the pleasurely things. But were they happy? All of these people, they actually died from alcohol abuse, drug abuse, prescription drugs, whatever it was. It showed their attachment and their coping method, their coping mechanism for happiness was to indulge in certain aspects of the world. So you would find that they would cope by having an elation, then a sharp depression. An elation meaning that while they have that certain shot of pleasure, it only leaves them with a drop of depression. It reminds me, and it felt like when I was reading these verses, that the world that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes is like a whirlpool. It's like the ocean, the sea. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes those people with lack of faith, those people that indulge themselves in the dunya, okay, to be in darkness, surrounded by darkness. And not just any kind of darkness, darkness with layers upon layers. And the only way they survive is by following the waves, by being caught up in the rip, okay? And then they get thrown into this rat race, and they eventually get tired. It is like when a person is surfing. When a person is surfing on a wave, okay? He feels elation. He feels the wind in his hair. He feels everything that is beneath him is lower than him. But no wave lasts forever. You would find that after the wave hits him, pushes him into the water, and he is caught up with a rift. And then what happens is that rip, it starts to suck him into the water. He can't breathe. The water goes into his lungs. And then he is lost. He has no control because his feet are not strong and settled the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to be settled in this world. So this is the understanding of elation followed by a depression. An elation followed by a depression. So seeking happiness, as we understand, is not seeking materialistic aspects. It's not the job that you have. It is not the money that you have. So after we have spoken about all of these misconceptions, what is the right criteria for seeking happiness? How can we seek happiness in the right way? The answer? Look for happiness internally, inside yourselves. And what does this mean? I found that the definition of happiness is not just a mere pleasurable sensation. Happiness is not just a mere pleasurable sensation. Do we all agree with that? Okay? It is the consciousness of the present moment with a deep sense of serenity and fulfillment. First. Second, a state that overpowers all emotional conditions and all joys and sorrows that can come in one's way. And number 3 is in contentment with what one has and his circumstance that he is in. Don't worry, this is no Julia Roberts, eat, pray and love. This is what Allah says in the Quran. These are the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in interpretation. فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ وَاشْكُرُوا لِي وَلَا تَكْفُرُونَ. So remember me and I will remember you. Consciousness of the present moment. The presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We feel that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching us. We are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way that we understand ihsan. أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَى. That we worship Allah like that we can see Him. And though you may not be able to see Him, know that Allah is watching over you. Be present. Have that feeling of taqwa inside you. The consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the present moment. You don't live for tomorrow. You don't live in the past. You live right now. And you live with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All your attachments is with Allah and nothing else. And be grateful to me and do not deny me. Be grateful. What does this mean? A deep sense of serenity and fulfillment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gifted you. That Allah is with you. Inna Allaha ma'ana. Allah is with us. We must understand this. And having this kind of understanding, it doesn't mean that our lives will not be full of hardship, which is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the next couple of verses explains in emotional conditions. He says, and we will surely test you with something of fear. So this is all emotional conditions and physical conditions that Allah will test you, and He will continue to test you. In tafsir Al-Baydawi and Abu Sa'ud, they mention that nabluwannakum comes from the word balawa, which means the thawb, your clothes, will be tested so many times until it rips. Meaning that you will be tested and tested so many times to see which one of you breaks in this world and which one of you stays in its natural state, stays with Allah. They will be testing you to see if you will be tested with fear, something of fear, and hunger, the limiting of sustenance in your life. Also, the loss of wealth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give and take. And something very important is about lives. In interpretation, anfusi, lives, people coming and going in your life. People coming and going, people dying and people coming as well. People leaving your life and people coming into your life. This will be all a test with the fruits and the prosperity that you have, but give good tidings to the patient. Those people that are patient, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them the good tidings. This means that in any kind of circumstance, when a disaster strikes you, you are in the presence of Allah and you say, Inna lillah. Indeed, we belong to Allah, and indeed, we return to Him. We will return to Him. So we know that everything that happens to us is surely from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have the mental state. We have the mind that we are optimistic about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has planned for us. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has planned this for you to have a certain thing in your life, you need to understand that there must be a hikmah, there must be a reason for why this is happening. And you are in the state of Allah. And you know that we belong to Allah. You know that indeed we will return to Him. And this is what should be inside our hearts. Today, we have so many different other things in our hearts. We see that we have our children, vitality, money, recognition, work, status, accessories, health, friends, possessions, cars, beauty, and Allah, part-time sometimes, cars, all of these things. We have them in our hearts. But the thing that we want to have is that Allah be the first priority. And knowing that everything comes from Allah and everything returns to Him, and Allah is in total power. Having the contentment that Allah has gifted me with something and He has taken it away from me. Knowing that everything happens by the will of Allah. Once we know this, then we can put our trust in Him, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will fill our hearts with contentment, which is the most important thing, which is the most important step towards happiness. Detach yourself. The ultimate love and attachment is reserved only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something beautiful that is in our deen. In our deen, when we do tafsir of certain verses of the Quran, the ulama have explained what love is. What is love in the Quran? And they explain that love has various levels. Love has various levels. The first level is hub. Sorry, the Arabic and English is not coming together. The second level is ishq. Let me explain what hub is. Hub is an infatuation. It's an emotional state. Ishq is an emotional longing, that you long after something. Wud, from Allah's name Al-Wadud, is a physical and emotional longing for something. The next one is a shawq. Shawq is a passionate appeal that you feel for a certain object. And the last one is al-lahwan. Is it coming up? It's not coming up. But the highest level of love in the Arabic language is ibadah. Sorry, the Arabic didn't come properly. Ibadah, it means that you are in total submission of the object of your love. When we spoke about hub, ishq, wud, lahwan, lahwan is a delirious state. It is a state where you are daisy. And ibadah is the highest level of love. How much of us have this love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How much of us feel that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most important thing and priority in their lives? And that He is the one that gives and takes. And if Allah is on my side, who can be against me? So having this feeling that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it creates the happiness, it creates a mechanism that you can cope, you can be positive, you can feel happiness inside you. Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah said something very beautiful, and I would like to finish off with these last couple of. He said, what will my enemies be able to do to me? What will my enemies be able to do to me? My paradise is within my heart wherever I go. My paradise is within my heart wherever I go. If I am locked up, it will not matter because I will have the chance to devote my time for contemplation. If I'm killed, I'm a shaheed, I'm a martyr. And if I'm exiled, I'll be a tourist. This kind of state, that happiness is inside the heart. Wherever you go, wherever Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah, wherever he was thrown, he would feel that his paradise is within his heart, not with the belongings, not with the device. His heart was always with Allah. And this is something that we have to always remember, that my happiness is within my heart. Wherever I go, we devote everything to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and with this inshallah we'll be successful. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم